Jeffrey Ashur, hello. Thank you so much for joining me on So Zoom In. I want to thank you so very much, the bottom of my heart, for spending this time with me. So you are a hyphenate, which I have to love because you are a QHHT practitioner, which we will get into in a bit. You are a Reiki master. You are an energy healer. Am I not right on the Reiki master thing? Okay. Well,
level two
all right.
attunement.
Okay. All right. All right. You are a life coach. You are many things, and we're going to dive in. But I have to also say, you are a jazz musician. Jazz or just musician?
Indeed, jazz.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
indeed.
All right. I love that. I love that. And we will get into frequencies and how that all ties in together. But first, I want to know about QHHT, because that is a topic that I feel so many people are going to be able to resonate with. And a lot of people are like, QHHT, what's that? So I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I'd be delighted to tell you and just to say thank you for having me on. This is a real honor and a pleasure, Sophia. And I know we're going to have a lot of fun today. So let's just dive right in. QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. It was a form of past life regression therapy created by a woman named Delores Canon. Now, back in the 60s, she was practicing hypnotherapy with her husband. They were helping people with smoking cessation, weight loss, and that sort of thing. And at the time, that was pretty well accepted. Well, her husband, John, got into a serious car accident, pretty much left her to the practice. One day, they were engaging in a session with a woman who clicked into what sort of looked like a past life. She was going on about some story, being someplace, and they didn't quite know what to make of it, but they went with it. This not only turned into her first book called 5 Lives Remembered, which she published a lot of years later, but it was the genesis of her quantum healing hypnosis technique. Now, it wasn't called QHHT at first because she went through a lot of discovery and exploration with people in this state of being. You can call it somnambulistic state, where we were in a very deep state of theta trance. And really, she discovered just how healing this mode was. So once you view past lives, you really get so deep that you can now access what she called the subconscious. Now, the subconscious, as she referred to it, wasn't the same exact thing as what the psychologists refer to. However, it was very close. And she would describe it as the all-knowing, loving part of you that is able to answer all of your questions, that will bring you to a state of profound healing. And that would apply to not only things of psychological nature, mental nature, emotional nature, but also physical. Because honestly, your subconscious is in touch with your autonomic nervous system. It's in touch with every part of your body. So if you're able to talk to it, you can then adjust what's going on in your body and potentially heal things. So she was able to contact that part of the person, the subconscious. It's really what we might call the higher self, or the soul consciousness of a person. So she discovered this is very healing, and she's been using it for 40 plus years to heal people of all kinds of things: depression, sadness, grief, anger. But then we go into the physical side where you're healing diabetes, cancer, heart disease. She would actually witness when bones would start to mend and cartilage would start to reconstruct itself during her session. She'd hear the crackling going on. So it's a very powerful technique. She was, right around, I think, 2000, she formed an academy, or she formed a way of teaching this to people, and passed the torch to her daughter, Julia, later in the 2000s. So
I have to
yeah.
know, what exactly drew you to her teachings? What was it that said you had to pursue that?
Very interesting. And I will tell you, it's been a system of synchronicities. So first of all, my whole life seems to have been crafted to bring me towards this practice. I think one of the most important things about the practice is the one-on-one conversations that you must have with people. You've got to be prepared to listen. You have to be caring. I believe there's a degree of empathy that is very supportive to this technique. But essentially, I was a starseed, and as many of us who may be watching this would be, your childhood isn't all that smooth. It can be a little rough at times. You don't always fit in. So that led me, and of course, we're very interested in the universe, how the universe works. So I was all that. I grew up in the Boston area where there's a lot of educational resources. My father was a school teacher. And, I was always tinkering with radios and TVs. So I really loved the sciences. At the same time, I was a very sensitive child. And I was affected empathically by a lot of things. I had absolutely no idea why this was going on, only to find out much later in life that we go through these things as an empath. Well, all that aside, I went to college, got my education in physics and music. So I had both sides of myself, our scientific side and the artistic side, which is, I believe, a good balance.
Well, I'm sorry, that's an Amber Alert. So
Awesome.
Someone is in desperate need of some QHHT. Okay, I shut that off. All right, go ahead, please continue.
Where was I now? Okay, I will get to the
You're
point.
balanced, creative and scientifically. Yeah, you're
so
balancing it.
I'm working on balancing myself. So towards that, you go through college, you get your degrees. I, went through to electrical engineering. I really was interested in circuit chips, so I went into that industry. And you're there, you kind of get some fulfillment. I wasn't as fulfilled as I could have been. And there were some personal development programs I could access. Corporate life tends to give you these things. Dale Carnegie, The Science of Selling was one, Toastmasters. I did them all. And they take you so far. It's good background how to interact with people. Really, I broke stride much later when I encountered the Tony Robbins mastery programs. These are really effective. He's exercising NLP. He's giving you the why to motivate you. It's just a really program. And it served me. It's sort of the awakening process. Now, I've always been, but really never strived to acquire all of the tools and information that we have available to us now since, say, 2012. So the Tony Robbins programs, and concurrently, now I had found network chiropractic through Tony Robbins. And through that, energy healing. So that's where I became trained in Access Bars, and then Conscious Life Expo, those sort of things. Mm-hmm. We learned Reiki and past life regression. Really, this set me up when I finally encountered the QHHT interview on YouTube. I think it was Allison Coe. And I was fascinated. She was talking about the new earth by having these past life regressions. They actually may be a future life regression, but in the mode she was dealing with, it could have been either. And we certainly can do either in QHHT. So to get to the point, I heard about it. It caught my attention immediately. And then they talked about getting trained. And I said, wait, you can get trained in this? Wow. So this is like instant access to the subconscious. What a perfect tool. I mean, this is way quicker than coaching, right? Mm-hmm. And energy healing. So I said, okay, let me do my due diligence. Let me go get a session. Well, here's where it gets even better. So I went looking for a practitioner on the site. And I'm thinking, well, there's probably somebody, might have to go out of state or drive a long distance. There was a practitioner like a little more than 20 minutes away from my house. Not only that, she was an intern, which means you didn't have to pay, $300, $400, $500 for a session. And on top of that, she said, well, my place isn't that great. I'll come to you. Wow. How much easier does it get than that? She came, right? We had a wonderful session. I mean, I got so much healing. I got so much insight. I saw I was a dolphin. And I think I might have even told you that story.
Yes. So
So
how many past lives did she take you through in
she
your
took
experience?
me through three, and I think I even saw an in between. So she really set the stage for me. She was a really good example to follow.
You know, I've heard that we've all had thousands upon thousands of incarnations, and when we remember a past life, it's usually something that we have to know. It's like our soul will give us glimpses of what we need to know now. Would you agree with that? Or
Yes, your subconscious really is the orchestrator. It will show you exactly what you need. And in fact, we could even refer to some interesting channeled material called the Ra material. So from the Law of One, Ra, who's this entity who's got all this wisdom, says the subconscious is in charge of your dreams. Okay, they control what you see in your dreams. Well, when you go through a QHHT session, you're effectively dreaming. This is really guided dreaming, but it's dreaming that brings you a profound healing.
how, so when you say profound healing, what exactly does that mean? Because I know some people would say, you know, dreaming is just your, you know, psychological way of processing stuff. Or you know, I think Jung said that. Or like my mom would say, you know, don't worry about nightmares; they mean nothing. But you know, now we're getting to like a dream state. To me, that's really powerful. But what exactly does that mean with the subconscious supporting that?
So when we are in a past life regression, we are effectively having images and symbols come into our mind, right? Same way it does while you're dreaming. And when we're guiding one into this, we're actually leading them into that beautiful, relaxed state. We also have some questions that we prepared before the session. So there's some intention, some intention behind what we're going to see. And you know, we discussed the questions beforehand, so the person is primed to be ready for these sort of things. Of course, it's important that you don't expect particular things, because then we do what we might call collapsing the quantum wave. And we want to be as open to everything as we possibly can, expecting how it's going to show up or when it's going to show up or anything like that. So yeah, that's the subconscious is going to lead you into seeing the past lives relative to the questions you have. And then of course, once we get through the past lives, that's when we invoke a conversation with the higher self. And that's when we can really ask the questions, get to the bottom of what it is they're going through. And when I say profound healing, I'm talking about, you know, things that you would expect to take a long time with a therapist, you know, weeks and weeks or months. You can affect things like spontaneously. I had a woman call me up the next day saying, this was my first experience. And she said, wow, Jeffrey, I feel so happy. I'm feeling so much better. She came in totally distraught and depressed and angry and scared that she was going to get kicked out of her house because it was such a bad marriage situation with her husband. She called me a week later and said, Jeffrey, I'm still really happy. She called me a month later. Jeffrey, I'm not only happy, I'm happy where I'm living now. I found a great place and I'm getting all these jobs. I mean, how does it get any better than that?
So she left. I take it she left her.
She did, yeah, she
Okay.
left.
Good for her. Well, okay, you gave her that foundation of doing it, or
That
her higher self gave it to her.
bingo, yes. Let me make sure that's important, is because I'm not really doing any healing. I'm just a facilitator. And it's really why I don't have to be a psychologist. I don't have to be an expert at life coaching
Mhm.
or NLP or anything like that. All I have to do is help them create a beautiful, comfortable space here. I'm creating a comfortable space for them. And I'm guiding them into that deep state. We discuss their questions to make sure that, you know, I've got some intelligence behind that to make sure they ask the questions that are on their mind. And then we will get to the conversation. We'll invoke the higher self by means of the method that Delores Canon created for us through 40 years of experience.
So,
And once we do that, we leave all the bad stuff in the past and we bring them out very methodically, very safely.
so does she have a script that you follow, or do you kind of just follow the guidelines?
There are some set scripts, yeah. Yeah, there are. It's very, very specific, but it's very, very carefully crafted to make the most use of time. We can get people relaxed in, the space of 10 minutes. And
And if you find that person who's not so relaxed and very resistant, what do you usually do?
well, Delores Canon had a word for these people. She called them left brainers. And you can sometimes tell these people because they'll be very analytical, right? And I just recently had a client just like that, really nice guy. I could really relate to him because he had a lot of the same things that, about himself that I kind of had as issues as a kid. And a lot of it kind of was like self-imposed. Like we do these things, we tell ourselves these things, and they're really not true. So anyways, yeah, he was a little analytical, and, I brought him into a relaxed state. He seemed to be doing great. We had great rapport. I knew I had rapport because I had recognized all of the signs. Well, just about when we were starting to view life, he got scared and he decided, oh, I can't be hypnotized. Well, now the fun begins because now I got to pull out all my little tools because I'm thinking I can do this. I can get this done. I have the ability to get him through the process. I venture to say that some people may have given up considering all of the speed bumps I had gone through in that session, but I stuck with it and I succeeded, and I was so happy that I got him connected to that subconscious, that higher self, and we absolutely nailed all the questions that he had. Called me back, said, Jeffrey, I feel so much better. I'm telling you, I almost want to cry when that happens,
Oh, that's
especially
wonderful.
with things that I may have gone through myself. I just love that.
Well, considering he stayed, it's a sign that he did want to go through with it, even though he was resisting. So he could have just left, right?
Well, he was just thinking that he couldn't be hypnotized.
I'm sure a lot of people would feel that way.
And, we do our best to explain, listen, you may feel very conscious through this whole thing. You might
Right.
not feel that you're asleep or anything that, television set tells you. So
Right.
we do our best to tell him that, but nevertheless, there's something going on that says, oh, no, I have to analyze this. We have to get him from their left brain back into their right brain.
So when a person is under, are they aware of what they're saying, or are they totally not aware?
That's a great question. There was a day when people were very much under and they weren't really hearing and seeing what was going on. They wouldn't remember it at the end. Lately, in the past 5 years or so, and this is according to Julia Canon, she confirms this, people are now very aware. I believe, I would explain it myself as the morphogenetic field is learning the process. And we're all getting acclimated to this process of past life regression technique.
So as a person is more acclimated to it, could a person access his or her own higher self without a facilitator?
Yes, indeed. Yes. And that's a great question because, you might think, well, once you do this, why do you need a facilitator? Well, if you can take yourself through the process, you absolutely can do this. The thing is, at first, it's nice to have a facilitator because it's kind of like, well, we're there to ask the questions for them. You can just sort of lie back and let the process flow rather than expend that effort of, okay, I have to think of this question. Do I remember this question? I have to ask it now. Am I hearing it? We're sort of a luxury car in a way where we're the bells and whistles. We help you through the process. And certainly at first you may not and have that ability to connect very easily. We help you once you have this connection, the door is open for you. This will be much easier for you to connect.
And do people come back to you, like say more than once, or is it like a one-time deal?
At first Delores Canon said, oh, it's one-time deal. And, we're kind of modifying that now. I think a lot of the practitioners I talk to say, yeah, it's perfectly fine to have more sessions. I mean, Delores Canon had plenty of repeat sessions, especially when she had someone she called a somnambulist. somebody who was really good at connecting to that all-knowing part of them, that universal knowledge. There were some beings who would be connected to such universal knowledge. She could do research with these people, as evidenced in her book, Jesus of the Essenes, Nostradamus. I mean, she really connected and did research time after time with these people. And I've done that with a few people myself. So yes, you can come back. If you want to come back for a second session, usually there's some things changed in your life. Maybe you want to delve deeper. And oftentimes when they do come back, we do go deeper. It's easier to go deeper in a second session.
And they usually come in with a stronger intention the second time, I would imagine, right?
Well, they may have different intentions. For example, the first time around, they might have said, well, I have a bad back, or I have a thyroid issue. Well, those have already been cleared up. Now what? Well, I got a problem with my boyfriend now. Or, my family's really difficult. How do I deal with them? And then we go through that and we get the answers to that.
So what about the current state of affairs? Have people been calling you because of everything happening right now? Because the quarantine and politics, and we're entering political season soon, so it's gonna get really heated on social media, and people just frustrated and upset, and so I would think they would need a call on, it's like, hey, help me out here. How do I deal with this?
Yeah, that's a mixed bag, really.
Yeah.
I have some people who are just not worried at all about this situation. And we know it's a big hoax. It's a big phony, baloney, fraud, fake. How many more words can I use for it? The thing is, though, I think we go into a state of allowance because a lot of good is coming out of it. So I'm not going to complain.
Right.
I will be aware, though. And one of the things that's resulting is that people are staying home. The sessions have really ramped off a bit during this time. But there are some who aren't worried, and they'll come and freely get a session to work out things that they haven't had time to work out prior to this quarantine situation. So it's a mixed bag, I would say.
Well, so I have a lot of people who would disagree about it being a hoax, and that they know people who are like really sick and scared, a lot of fear. How can they relieve themselves of that fear? How can they say, okay, if they're sick, let's get you better. Let's not sink ourselves into this fear of sickness, but work on health. And how can that happen?
Oh, goodness. That's a complicated question. It depends so much on the person, how asleep they are or how awakened they may be. So if they're awakened, you have a better shot at showing them that fear is the biggest enemy. And for those who are programmed into believing everything the state feeds us, then it's going to be really difficult to, help them to see the truth that's going on behind the scenes. In that case, I would just allow them to pursue the path they're on. There's no judgment. We all awaken in our own schedule, right? So I would just say support them as lovingly as you can. If there's any way you can drop any seeds of wisdom so that maybe at some point they'll recognize it or they'll be corroborating information, that's great. But mostly I would just say support them lovingly and help them to find a way to dissolve their fear somehow and not be in fear. From what I've heard, ultimately, this is the same as any flu, and we shouldn't fear it as anything very special. Of course, probably a lot of doctors will beat me up for that, and I'm not giving any health advice. Don't ever anybody get me wrong, but that's just what I've heard. And I had a bad flu in December, and I know everybody around me had this thing. Dry cough, took forever to get rid of it. It was kind of miserable, but we got through it. But all through that time, I was even telling everybody, I wonder if we're under biological attack because everybody's sick.
Right.
So that's why it's my personal experience, why I believe the way I do.
Do you think this experience for everyone right now is giving them a chance to clear out a lot of fear that goes back generations? I mean, because it's just like, it just feels like the energy is so full of fear. Could it be the fear that's been there for generations and years and years and years that's just finally come up for clearing? Or
So
what do
that's
you think?
interesting point. Does fear come up like this? And if we're feeling the fear, does it do some good for us? Does it move us forward? I'm not sure of the dynamics of how, if I would articulate it in just that way. What I would say is there's a lot of catalyst that is showing up that helps us to see ourselves. And with this catalyst, we grow through that. And through that, we can dissolve some karma, right? We see more of who we are. Perhaps there's some epiphanies that we have. I suppose if we do go through some suffering, that will potentially burn off some karma. But ultimately, by going through the catalyst, that's where we grow.
And we're being forced to look at ourselves too, which I think a lot of people haven't really done before.
Exactly. We got plenty of opportunity to do that now.
Right. Well, I think what you're doing as part of this QHHT is fascinating. If it, it sounds like it won't hurt you. It sounds like it's very love-based, and it really gives you a chance to open up and explore parts of yourself that you've never known or realized. Has anyone ever come out of an experience not feeling good?
That's a good question too, because ultimately it's just like a guided meditation. There's no way you can hurt a person. And the subconscious is absolutely not going to let anything bad happen to a person. It's not going to show them any information that isn't good for them. Okay. And, Delores Canon said information is like medicine. It can be like poison. And if they get information that's the wrong information, it will take them backwards. So the subconscious doesn't show it to you in this healing situation like that. So you're not going to have anybody harmed in any way. I will say this though, after your session, things can go either way, right? It's like you can be very blissful and light, or you could find yourself releasing. And people may have physical releasing. So let's say, for example, I heard of this alcoholic Dolores Canon talked about. I haven't had an alcoholic myself, but she will not, she wants to get over her alcoholism. So the subconscious will force her to, reject the fluid. So she'll spend the rest of the day sick the next day after trying to drink alcohol. And that actually helped her get over her addiction. Other cases where people are releasing, maybe there's toxins in their body, they'll find that kind of releasing. There could even be anxiety forms of releasing. Okay, people might feel jittery and things are coming up for them in their consciousness that they have to deal with. That's also a form of releasing. Usually it subsides after a few days. 2-3 days is effectively the window that we talk about a lot. But you can have a releasing, but know that it's all good, because on the other end of it, you're going to feel lighter, and there is a shift for you in store.
Now, you record the sessions, right? You videotape them or audio tape them, and you're supposed to listen to it afterwards, right?
That is a very good idea. And, a lot of the times people can revert to old patterns. Well, let's say, okay, I cured a backache. Okay, I go for weeks and weeks, and then all of a sudden somebody triggers me, and now all of a sudden my back might start to ache again. Well, you just go listening to your recording, and your healing will come right back to you. Okay, and this is, Julia Canon does a beautiful job talking about this, and it's in a post that's titled, can you heal through QHHT? Absolutely. You can heal anything. There's nothing impossible with subconscious. The question is, will you heal? Will you release the payoffs you're getting from having a certain affliction? Because let's say I have bad knees. Well, I can't really go to work, can I, with bad knees? That can be a crutch. That can be something that keeps you from having that responsibility. So you may cling to that. Or maybe somebody is smoking and they don't want to give up smoking because it gives them a chance to exit the situation, to go out for a break every now and then, right? So things like that, you've got to help the client really get past those payoffs they're getting for these afflictions.
Right. Um, it's funny because sometimes they may not even admit to it that they're holding on to that. And so I'm wondering if they realize what they're clinging on to, is there a sense of denial, even though through the QHHT session they release it?
There absolutely can be a sense of denial. So we will ask most of the time, why do they have this affliction? Why are they, you know, it's not, we don't really use the word pain or suffering during the conversation with the subconscious, but we'll say, why are they experiencing this discomfort? And the subconscious may very well say, we've tried to show them. We've tried, but they just don't want to give up the welfare check, or they want to escape the family situation or something. So you will get the subconscious to tell you why. It's not up to us to get that in the conscious, conversation with the person.
Hmm. That is so fascinating. Just have that kind of conversation and hear that back. To have the session, then like say a week later or even a year later, to hear it again. It's like, oh, well, I could have saved myself all this grief had I just listened. Just it's kind of like our higher self is like our parent, right?
Yeah, it's watching out for you. Absolutely. It loves you very much. And at the same time, here's the thing about the higher self. My understanding of this is really related to the raw material. Ra talks of our higher self as our sixth density aspect of us. And it talks to us, it communicates to us through time and space. But here's the rub. It completely obeys, it completely respects our free will, which is exactly why it doesn't just offer you this information unsolicited. It will almost never give you anything that you don't ask for. And that's why we have to ask for it, because it is constantly respecting our free will. Very important.
So this love one, it's not a religion, right?
No,
No.
it's just channeled material.
Okay. So Ra, because I don't think a lot of people are familiar with Ra or the Law of One. Who exactly is, or what exactly is Ra?
Okay, I'll give you a quick Reader's Digest version.
The Cliff Notes version.
Really, really quick. So back in 1981, there were three people who formed a little group called L&L Research. There was a woman who was the channel, Carla Ruckert, and Jane McCarty, who was basically became her husband, a very close friend of the two of them. And oh goodness, I'm on the spot here. McCarty, and the questioner was a PhD physicist. He was also, I believe, a professor of mechanical engineering, really smart guy. And of course, engaged in the mainstream sciences. I'll remember his name in a moment. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm having a brain cramp. But they went through like 150 sessions where Carla would be lying down very comfortably, tucked in with nice white sheets. And they would basically bring her into trance, and she would then invite the entity Ra to speak through her. Now, Ra was a being who was very wise, extremely high wisdom, very loving, and they would go and ask him questions about universal knowledge, things about history. By the way, this was the Ra that visited Egypt. And what they discovered about Ra, he was a sixth density. Well, it's another story about explaining what the densities are, densities of consciousness. He's a very highly conscious being, almost, angelic realm you might think of. But he, as he told us, came from the civilization on Venus. And Venus, as they ascended through their consciousness formed a social memory complex. And they went through third density life just like we do. They're very compassionate to us. And they want to help us because we are karmically connected. So anyways, they channeled this information through Ra. Ra helped us to understand the densities of consciousness, 1 through 7, for example. 1, mineral kingdom. 2, animals and plants. 3, humans, the density of choice, that's us. And then 4 is love. 5 is wisdom. 6 is wisdom, love. And then 7 is gateway to infinite intelligence. So that was a basic part. And then, of course, the distortions being free will, love, and light from the perfection of infinite creator. Okay, so these are all the basic fundamentals of the law of one. But they channeled this back in 1981, very consistent. The information was very clear. And there's been a lot of challenges to challenge the validity of it. And, it just time after time, they have basically found it very consistent. And there's a lot of corroborating evidence, information that's come forth as well. So that's the law of one. It's not a cult. It's a cosmology or universal knowledge that is extremely helpful to help us reach, our mission of service to others or service to self, whichever path you're on. Service to others, of course, is the more expansive, the easier, the more loving path as we travel our journey towards returning to the infinite creator.
So would you say if you were having a QHHT session, you could very well be, that person could channel something or someone?
I have certainly had experiences where the client channels another being. They may be talking to them. There's different ways, different levels of connecting. So let's say in a past life, a person could be describing things objectively. Oh, this guy's going here. Oh, he's doing that. Oh, he looks like this. I think he's a little sad now. Then you've got people who are subjective, who they will speak as if they're the person. It's like, oh, I'm seeing this guy and it's really hot out here. I'm feeling really, and look at that guy. What do you mean you can't see him? I had a woman get mad at me because she's, what do you mean you're asking me all these questions? Can't you see him? He's right there. She thought I was in there with him.
That's great.
Yeah. And then there are times when they'll just be, in the course of the conversation with the higher self, all of a sudden out of nowhere, they'll change their state and they'll say, this is Metatron. And they'll start speaking with that tone of voice, with some information that comes forth. I even got messages from Metatron and from other beings. So, yes.
Has there ever been a situation that you found to be scary for you as the practitioner?
Good question. Yes, there was one time earlier on where a woman was rather distraught. She had a part of herself that was very disparaging and very unkind to herself, to say it nicely. And I took her through the session, and I was a little nervous because it was a new thing to me. Very few sessions go the same. So I just asked, why are you saying that? And you don't you know how powerful she is, and she's a loving being. And I can't quite remember all of the things I took her through, but in the end, she's very happy. She called me up the next day, in weeks later. She was very happy and very relieved that part of her wasn't basically afflicting her anymore.
So a session is typically done in person. Well, it is done in person.
The pure form of QHHT is done in person, yes.
Now, with Delores Canon, well, she's passed on, but if she knew the circumstances of, the quarantine and everyone being locked down because of different reasons or for whatever actual reasons going on behind the scenes, would she allow or condone like an internet session?
This is a very, this is an interesting question. Well, first of all, let me just say QHHT in person is going to be the ideal conditions. And all things being equal, you want to be able to be in person because it's really the safest way to go. Now, in standard hypnotherapy, you can do a past life regression online. You're just not advised to go very deep. Well, there's another modality which you may have heard of as BQH, which does have protocols to allow people to do things online. And they do have sort of safety measures in place. If the internet connection goes down, or if it gets weak, or whatever happens, there's sort of backup plans. And, I haven't assumed all of the protocols of that just yet.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely very soon to come for me. But it can be done online. And here's the thing now, I think it's Candace Craw Goldman, is sort of heading up that whole modality. And she was very close to Delores. And Delores had said in her book that, make this your own. This is going to be a modality that's a living process. It's a living method. And if, you talk to the Academy, well, they're very much focused on sticking to the basics, sticking to the in-person method. And I'm on board with that too. So I think in cases where, people otherwise wouldn't be able to have a session, I personally would think it's okay to do things online, given the correct protocols. And as long as you don't tell people this is QHHT, it's not real, it's not the pure form of QHHT. It's like QHHT. And it certainly can be very healing and very effective, but just be careful not to brand it as QHHT. I think that's important.
Well, because you said earlier that our higher self won't hurt us. We won't let us see or experience anything that would be harmful.
Correct.
And then when you are in a personal situation with someone, it's not like you're touching them or, laying hands on them, right? There is that space between you.
Yeah, in fact, we're actually advised not to touch under any circumstances,
right,
person while they're in that state.
Has anyone channeled Delores?
Yes, there have been people who have channeled Delores. Yes.
And has well, she, when she had a whole experience with I can't talk, Nostradamus, she wrote like 2 books because of that conversation. So if I was wondering if anyone channeled her and asked her, how would you like to see QHHT done now? I'm curious what she would say.
There are some who have connected with Delores. I think we all connect with Delores in some way. I feel I've connected with her, and it seems to have been pretty authentic. And, I believe she is condoning the other methods, the other ways of reaching people. I think her objective was to really serve the collective in whatever way was most helpful and most healing, most awakening to people. And if you had something that was going to bring that awakening to people, I can't see how she would object to it.
Right.
Just so long as we're careful, respect the branding, the brand name of QHHT, because it truly is a very effective method that was crafted by Delores, to do what it does.
Well, it's so interesting. When I first learned about her, she reminded me so much of Edgar Cayce and what he would do with his, being a medical intuitive and being able to see into past lives and how he was able to help people. But he didn't turn it into a teaching. He just kept it all, something that he did and help people. So I see so many similarities between the two, which is kind of exciting because it feels like there's a connection between the two.
Yeah. Edgar Cayce was using his own vessel as that channel for the healing information for people. Now, there's the closest thing to it in QHHT, I would say, if it's not the actual person as the subject. We can do what's called surrogate healing. And if there's somebody close to you, you can use your vessel as the healing instrument for the other person. And I've had people ask for healing for their sons and daughters, their spouse, their brother, sister, mother. And I've heard some good results from this. I don't always get the feedback. Sometimes they don't realize it. It may even take time to realize the benefits. But yes, we do have the ability to do surrogate healing where one person is channeling information or energy for another person.
Could that be done for, say, something with a person with the COVID infection?
I would think that could be absolutely within the realm of possibility.
Well, I think that would be exciting just to, someone try it out, because so many people are like, they have this illness, but, so to be open to that kind of healing would just open up so many other avenues that they hadn't considered before, which I think would be interesting because, we are all energy, we are all frequency. So to just shift that frequency into thinking of the possibility, that can really open up a floodgate of new possibilities. So that's kind of exciting.
And consider that this is quantum healing. And the word quantum implies infinite possibilities, instantaneous, in the now. Everything is in the now. All these infinite possibilities are here in the now. We can take a direct route without intermediate little bitty pieces, steps. We go take a quantum leap. Now, having said all that, we have to be careful not to assume how things are going to show up. Your healing can show up in an infinite amount of ways. It could be spontaneous, anywhere from spontaneous to the right doctor showing up for you with the exact cure or the exact remedy, right? And everything in between. So once we release any expectation, that healing comes to us easier and easier.
It sounds like for anything though, right? Once you give up the expectations of something having to happen a certain way, if you just let it go and leave it up to the universe, that's when the magic really happens, right?
Yeah, it's being in a state of allowance. And, we activate our intention by what we'd like to feel. What is that feeling we would like to feel as a result? What's our, outcome? And it's not always the mechanical form and structure of what we have in our mind. It's the feeling of having that, whatever it is, on the other side, right?
Oh, that sounds so beautiful. Just be open to it.
Yeah.
Be open to receive and to just be in that flow. Yeah, that does sound beautiful. I like how that sounds.
Well, manifestation is boiled down to something very simply. When we align our emotions, thoughts, language, and action with our intention, then we will see it show up, and that's the practice, right? People are, it's like Abraham Hicks says, you can feel it all you want, you can think it all you want, but if you're languaging it in the negative against it, and if you're doing things against it, well, it's like stepping on the gas and stepping on the brake all at the same time, right?
Right. Words are so important because their frequency, right? I mean, I just find it so fascinating how everything comes down to the different frequencies we're at. It's like, are you willing to expand it or contract it? Being harmonious, like when you hear a lot of notes that don't jive and your whole body just cringes, but when you play a melody or something that's harmonious, then it feels good and you feel inspired and you're in that flow.
Yeah.
So, and I go back to you being a musician, because you've always been a musician ever since a child, right?
Yeah.
So you've always, in a way, been in that flow.
There have been a lot of beautiful moments in music where I could get lost in it. Sure. Yeah.
You've
It's a
always
good
been,
exercise. It's a good exercise for learning flow. Absolutely.
and being open to learn and being curious and exploring, but knowing your boundaries too as you're doing that, right?
Sometimes better than others.
Yeah. Back to QHHT, there are different levels of being a practitioner, right?
Yes.
You talked about the intern who worked with you. What level are you currently at?
I'm level 2. And level 2 is given all of the advanced training that pretty much you're going to get. Level 3 are just tested. They're, qualified so they can have that level, recognized for doing so many sessions. Now, there's also maintenance. You have to maintain it. And some people are happy with level 2. And I'm personally happy with level 2 because I have all the tools I need. I'm practicing little life coaching and energy healing. So level 2 is fine for me now. It doesn't mean I won't at some point maybe, go for the level 3 vetting. But right now I'm perfectly happy with level 2. I'm practicing with some really good sessions. 99.9% of my sessions are really enjoyable. There are some that are difficult and that are a little exhausting. And I have the tools to handle it. I've proved to myself that I am absolutely dedicated to this art.
So if someone wanted to find you, where would they find you at?
I have a website. It is qhhtboston.com.
Mhm.
And on there, I have information that talks about what QHHT is, a little bit about my background, and is actually, a way to communicate with me through the messaging screen.
Oh, great. And so even if someone just wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit before scheduling an appointment, they can do that, talk on the phone. Okay. You're open to that. That'd be great. I
Yeah.
I think, I've done it before, not with you, but it was an incredible experience, and I would definitely do it again, just because being able to dive in so deeply and learn so much about who I am now because of that. I think people would really benefit from it, and especially when they feel that they're in a safe environment and they can really trust the person they're working with, and everything is confidential. What the two of you share, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So it is a very safe environment to really explore your own boundaries. What your soul is. What has been the most outrageous experience you've had? Can you share something like that? No, of course, no names, but
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm having them all the time. I love the ET lives. I've had so many ET live viewings that I'm wondering if they're not finding me.
they're like, ooh, a chance to come on in.
Well, sometime I think when Corey Good brought his information just to the, you know, how pervasive ET life is and how much we're in contact with it and how different it can be.
Right.
This absolutely opened the door and just gave me a strength in my belief, so that when somebody says the first sentence of what could be a past life, I instantly see it. So one of the interesting lives, I would say, oh goodness, there's so many. Where do I go? The Arcturian Blue Being. This was a
Ooh.
wonderful session. So she clicked right into, oh, I have 3 fingers. I'm like, oh, what color are you? Oh, I'm blue. Oh, interesting. Are you tall? Or, obviously she was tall and thin and wasn't wearing any clothes. I guess it was warm and they were comfortable. And they don't have any hang-ups in Arcturus. So, anyways, it was a boy. She found herself as a male aspect. So what I found so intriguing was that she was expanding molecules. And this was her practice for the profession she was going to go into, her service, as she called it, her service. And she then said, would you want to hear about the 5 grids I'm going to work on, what the 5 grids on the planet are? I'm like, sure, I'd love to hear that. So she talked about the 5 grids on that planet. And I'll give you a quick idea of, and this kind of alludes to what's going on Earth right now. Our grids have been taken down. It's why probably we're not empowered to do a lot of the things, the telepathy, the telekinesis that they could do. So, the one grid, let me think if I can remember all 5 exactly. So the local communications grid, there was a long distance communication grid. There was a navigation positioning grid, sort of like where to place a home or a center of some sort. Then there was a long-range navigation grid. And then there was a nourishment grid, I guess, where to help them receive energy, how to consume their energetic food. That was a grid. And yeah, that was really fascinating. And it was so clear.
Wow.
It was so lucid. She was totally subjective, totally somnambulistic. And that session was a real pleasure.
Wow. So did the Arcturian being happen to say, we can do this, or can we do this, or was it just something that he was working on?
We're really engaged in a healing exercise. So at that
Mm.
point, I wasn't,
Okay.
in an exploration mode.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's
Right.
good. No.
So
So
yeah, we
there
were.
is integrity in what you're doing.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Yeah.
But can you ever go back and say, hey, this is fascinating stuff. Can we explore it? Can you do that?
Absolutely. Oh, sure. I've invited people back plenty of times. Sure. Yeah. Yep.
That
And
sounds interesting.
with success. Yeah.
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 Oh, that sounds very interesting. It's like,
Mm.
wow. Just
Mm.
get those wheels spinning. It's like, huh. Well, what's interesting too, something like QHHT is something you can do for the rest of your life if you so chose. There's no age limit on it. There's
Correct. Yes. Yes. In terms of having a session, we're encouraged to, serve people. I think it's at least 18 years old, might even be 21. But, to a point in their life where, probably there's been some, buildup of issues to deal with. I don't know. I suppose you can listen. I had my first past life regression at I think it was age 5 or 6. And my auntie Teresa, she was a hairdresser, and she was, sort of, studying these ESP things. She says, Jeffrey, honey, come here. Want to go down to the alpha level? And I said, okay, auntie. And she said, we're gonna show you a life in the past. I'm like, okay, auntie. And she took me right down. I counted down, and I was just so, open to it. I was a little Indian boy, and I described my dress, and apparently I was, not a low level. I was like the chief's son or something. In my own QHHT session, it's apparent that life had come back to view. I'd come back to view that life, and it turned out I was a healer. So I was the tribe medicine man, and it was lovely.
wow. And here you are, a healer again, an energy healer, a QHHT healer. You're out to, and it sounds like the planet needs a lot of healing.
Yeah, we as a collective have been in a vibration of, fear and limitation, and this is coming to an end. There's been a lot of limiting ideas we've been sold. And we can look at this in a number of ways. We can say, okay, well, if you go into victim mode, obviously everything happens to you. But we're not in the belief of victim mode. We believe that somehow, some way, we've invited this catalyst, and we're making use of this catalyst to grow and expand. And of course, referring to law of one, you see the dynamics of this, how, if you were just sitting fat, happy, spoiled rich kid, you'd never expand.
Right.
So that's why we're going through this, is for that expansion experience. And there may be some karmic history that goes along with it. But yeah, this is, I think it's intentional. We are now emerging from it, and I believe things are going to be amazing based on some of the information that's coming through in my sessions about the new earth, and a lot of other practitioner sessions are discussing it as well.
Oh, that's all very exciting. It is exciting. But I would think in the meantime, we all just need to be very love-based, heart-based, right?
Absolutely. It's a time to go within and, connect with our higher self, because our higher self has a very high vibration. Whenever you connect with that, you're also going to rise. So, the heart is the powerhouse of all of that connection. It's the powerhouse of connecting with other people. It energizes all of the other chakras in your body, all the other energy centers in your body. So, yeah, very important.
So even though we can't be in close proximity with other people because of these rules, we can still connect with them energetically, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yes, it's higher self to higher self on that level. We can actually feel each other. If you focus on it and you open to it, you can actually feel yourself hugging somebody, and they will most likely have that sensation at the same time. It's very possible to do that.
okay, well, I'm hugging you right now. I'm just sending you that warm energy of hugs and hugs and hugs, because we need lots of hugs right now. Just lots
Yes,
of love vibes. Definitely. Well, Jeffrey, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I'm just so proud of what you're doing. It's very exciting, and it is inspiring, because we can all connect. And when we have a facilitator like you to help us, it just makes it easier for everyone, I think. When you tune into you and you heal yourself, it's like you're really healing everyone also. And so I just think that's so beautiful. So thank you.
absolutely. Yes, in fact, healing ourselves is one of the most powerful things we can do for the collective. So I thank you, Sophia, for inviting me on today. This has been a real thrill. You're an absolutely lovely host, and so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
All right.